Let's weave a landscape, a green landscape. There will be no snow in this landscape. Let's get started. So one of the first things I did is I got onto my ever trusty app, Canva. Not sponsored or anything, I just really love Canva. But hey Canva, if you're watching, hit me up. And I just started to search landscape painting because I absolutely love landscape paintings. I have a whole gallery wall of them. And I found a few that were giving me like all the feels I want to feel, which is I just want to lay in a grassy field with the sun on my face in a land where there are no bugs. Is that so much to ask? I'm gonna be weaving this on our regular size flat pack frame loom because I'm being nice to myself, and we're gonna go for a reasonable size, not too small, not too big. And I grabbed all kinds of materials. A lot of these are from Unfettered Co, and I will put links and lists in the description. Here's the vibe we're going for. So we're kind of going from these darker greens. I'm thinking this one's gonna be the fringe, and we're gonna just do a variety of greens, probably a little bit of white in there just to have some contrast mixed in. And then we're moving up toward these blues, again with a little bit of white, possibly a little bit of this navy just to bring some depth to it as well. But we'll see how it goes. So let's get a warp on this loom and start weaving. I'm using this 412 linen warp string. I love that it's a natural color. I feel like this will be perfect for a landscape style piece. Since I wanna use a darker fringe today, I'm gonna use this dark green yarn for my base, which is a twining stitch followed by a few rows of plain weave. Now I'm trying to decide what length I want the fringe. I think I'm gonna keep this one a little bit shorter. I've been really liking a shorter fringe lately. And in this piece, because the bottom half is gonna be all the green and then we're gonna do a sky, I feel like the green fringe is gonna be kind of part of this piece. Now, another question I have is, do I want to add something else to the fringe? Like, do I want it just to be one string color, or do I want to add something else in there to give it sort of that multicolor, multi-dimensional feel? So I'm gonna go to the yarn wall and see what I can find. I think I'm just gonna go with a plain green. I'm gonna do my best today, honestly, to not linger too much on the decisions, because I feel like it's just what I'm needing right now is like, I just want to weave, I want to enjoy it, and I want to not overthink it. Now, the hardest part about starting a new weaving is starting a new weaving. It's like putting the first mark on a blank canvas. Now, the good part is if I put a mark on it I don't like, I can just unweave it. But it always still feels, especially with these more organic pieces, I always feel a little bit intimidated on where to start, because the thing is, whatever you put on the loom, you're sort of building on. And so it's actually going to affect the rest of the weaving. And yes, we can unweave, but I don't want to go all the way back to the start when I'm all the way up here. You know what I mean? So where do I start? I think what I want to do is build up a little bit of a hill here on the bottom. Maybe even just like this, I just laid this out. Or I could do it so it sort of tapers down like that, which also looks really nice. I don't know. I'm just gonna take a length and we'll see what happens. So this is kind of like pile weave, except I'm not actually wrapping it around a little dowel or anything, because this is faster and I don't want it necessarily to be perfectly even. I'm really pleased with the way that this texture looks. This boucle yarn mixed with a little like bubble style almost stitch. It really brings some interesting texture there without it needing to just be like super thick wool roving necessarily. Now, interesting, what's happening here is I'm almost like coming out. Oh, actually no, it doesn't look too bad. I want to pay attention to those sides. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect, but I do like to keep my sides, you know, kind of straight anyway. What do we want to do next? Like, I could sort of define each section, even if it's just kind of subtly. That actually looks kind of cool, and almost could look like I'm looking at this one picture off to the side. But see how it's just sort of like a meadow with flowers? Maybe having sort of this cotton frizz yarn ribbon stuff defining the tops could almost feel like there's something growing at the top. Yeah, I think that really works. Not only does it sort of define the shape, but it adds some extra texture, and I think it's gonna stop this piece from potentially feeling a little bit muddied. Because sometimes I find what happens when you're using a lot of colors that are similar but they're not exactly the same. It can all kind of blend together and not necessarily in like the best way. So I think that adding that just little bit of white to bring in a little bit of contrast and definition is gonna help. I think I'm gonna do basically a sumac with this one. So it's probably easiest just to start on this end. Okay, so something I'm noticing here with my sumac, we've got some gaps. So I think, just gonna back up here for a minute and see if I can just sort of remedy that a little bit. That looks a little fuller. So now I'm gonna put in another little piece of this white to sort of, again, break up all the green a bit. Now we need another color and material to bring in. I have this darker wool, but I'm not sure if that feels too dark. What would it look like if we used this in like a super chunky way? Like we just let it be like, does that look good? I've never done that before. Just sort of let it go a little bit flat. But I mean, like, why not? But I am wondering if it would look better if I did over one, under one instead of over two, under two. That's actually kind of cool, right? And then this would go over top of that. I mean, that looks kind of, you guys, does it look like, okay, very abstract, but could it look like trees? Almost like this is a tree line because we're kind of seeing the green in these like vertical stripes now because of the way I wove it in. There is something, I feel like this angle right here that's happening is too, look how straight it is. And I want it to sort of be a little bit more curvy. So can I play around with this a little bit to make it, yeah, more curvy? And I mean, that kind of worked. Sometimes you gotta go back and just play with things to see if you can get it more of the shape that you want, which for, in my case, it's like, I kind of want it to feel like rolling hills, you know what I mean? So if we shift some of this around, it's feeling a little bit more like that now. The one thing I will say, this is ending going underneath this warp string, so I think I'm gonna cheat this a little bit and just go over because it's just gonna be easier to tuck in later. So I'm gonna do more of this white, and I think this is where we'll start moving into the sky. You know, we could potentially, oh my gosh, we should do clouds, right? This is a recycled sari silk ribbon. So what would it be like if I made that basically the whole background and then came in with some merino wool roving and just made like little tufty clouds? But let's see what weaving over two, under two looks like and if it's going to look good. Oh, you guys. Okay, pause. I just had an idea. So I was looking again, thinking about these paintings and how there's like some flowers and stuff. How cute would it be if I maybe needle felted little dots in this like field section that made it look a little bit like there are flowers in the field? I think that would be so cute. I think we need to do that. But I'm gonna get this background in and see if we can figure out the clouds. But I think we have to do it because I think that's gonna be so cute. Because I'm weaving this background a little bit more loosely, I might be able to just sort of, you know what I mean? Push this down and weave a cloud and then just weave right over top of it. Maybe that's the way to go. I've never really woven a cloud before, but let's just see what we can come up with. Want it to be sort of pillowy, but maybe not excessively humongous. Okay, I think I'm heading in the right direction, but I think it might be a little bit too chunky. So I think what I'm gonna do is split this piece in half because this particular roving, you can see it's very full. So I think taking half the thickness will actually be plenty, and we'll do our first little cloud right here. Now I just wanna make sure that we wanna lock that in nicely, leave a little tail. The other thing about taking a half thickness is that it's gonna be easier to smush it down later because it's not as thick. Now I don't want this to turn into a sumac stitch. So if I go the other way, you know, oh, there we go. That looks a little better. I mean, that looks okay. Do I want it to sort of be a little bit longer though? Okay, let's just weave over it and see how we feel about it. I kind of like that, but I think that this maybe is unnecessary. I think I just like don't need to make it a double. Yeah, I think that was it. We put another little one over here. So now I think we can put in one last cloud. Maybe now I go in with this and I start on a single row of plain weave. And by that I mean over one, under one, because at the top I do want to do a twining stitch, and I think I'm just going to use this silk ribbon for the twining stitch so it all matches really nicely. And I don't really want to get too much closer to the top anyway because it's getting a bit tight as it is. So I think I'll do one more row of plain weave, and then I'm going to take a new piece and do twining with that. So let's talk about adding in a little bit of details now, because I love the way that this looks, but I do think that it's sort of missing something, and I think that's where I want to do the little flowers. So one thing I really like about the reference photo is there are these basically just white flowers with yellow middles. So I'm wondering if that would look really good. I mean, these colors are actually very similar, so I think that could look really nice. So I think we're just gonna go for it. Now, the one thing I will say is that once I start needle felting, I can't really undo it because it's going to disturb all of this green roving. So it's a risk I'm willing to take, but it might not work out. Does it look like an egg or does it look like a flower? Oh my gosh, that's the question. Oh, I think that one looks a little bit more like a flower. I think I'm gonna call that good. So we need to flip this over and we need to start tucking in all the ends, and let's see what this looks like all finished. So I'm gonna actually, for once in my life, take the time and just put away all these materials. You know, for this one, I think I don't want the fringe to be perfect. So I'm just basically gonna at least go along and make sure that it's not super short on one side and super long on the other. But I think I'm kind of liking, I just like the imperfections on this one. Okay, my day has totally turned around. I am so pleased with this adorable little landscape piece. I'm so glad I pushed myself to do it, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you enjoyed this video, check out this playlist next. Oh my gosh, I love it.